Welcome to the show. Today is January 30th, 2023. Let me start by saying that I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. Today we'll be talking about what used to be stock symbol MMTLP and what is now the private company Nextbridge Hydrocarbons. The title of this presentation is FINRA Creates Fraudulent Counterfeit Shares. And let me explain what this presentation is all about. Okay. A friend of mine contacted me. He apparently contacted a congresswoman about FINRA, and he received a response from that congresswoman. She said something like, FINRA is just there to try to protect investors. That's what FINRA told her, and she relayed the message on. That's what she believes, right? So anyway, my friend wanted something quick and concise to send to the congresswoman. It has to be 100% true, irrefutable, okay, in a non-disputable manner, right? And he needs it to be very quick and very precise. And very precise. And it occurred to me that this could be useful for other situations that might develop, right? Suppose a news crew wants to interview you. What do you say? You want to say something quick, concise. You may not be able to think of what to say on the spot, but if you watch this video, hopefully you'll get an idea of what to say. You can use this video if you want, whatever. Anyway, I just thought it might help, because you can come up with something yourself. You might come up with something better. And if you do, great. All more power to you, right? Use that. But if you haven't thought of anything yet, that's quick and concise and that could be useful, hopefully this video will be useful to you, right? I'm reminded of the story that around, 1776, there's a bunch of guys in some colonies. They had some grievances against the king at that time, and there was a variety of various different issues. Some tax increases for tea and stuff like that, some mistreatment by representatives of the crown, that kind of stuff. But anyway, they needed a summary statement. They needed it to be precise, to be quick, that everyone could understand, anyone could quickly convey, and it could be sent, that summary statement could be sent to the king with no ambiguity, right? It had to be very quick. It had to be very concise. And what they came up with was brilliant. It's basically no taxation without representation. It's like, hey, look, you can tax us, but if you're going to tax us, we want a voice that will at least be heard by the crown, right? So no taxation without representation, okay? Very simple, very concise, very useful. Okay, it summarizes the situation. Can't be argued with easily because, it makes sense. It's obvious, right? But back then it was considered to be, a genius move. So I'd like to come up with something quick and concise, something you can state in a few seconds. It could be very useful. In Silicon Valley, we take more than a few seconds. We have this thing called an elevator pitch. It summarizes a situation to a venture capital in the space of time it takes for an elevator to reach its destination. The idea is that you're stuck in a VC is stuck in an elevator with you, and so you could quickly deliver your pitch, and then he would hear it. Whether or not he chose to act on it is his own thing. But if your pitch is persuasive enough, he might just suddenly stop and think about it and ask you for more information, right? But sometimes you need something that can be summarized in just a few seconds to summarize the situation that is undisputable, right? Later on, you can flesh it out and describe the situation. So I came up with this, and I hope it works. I believe FINRA creates fraudulent counterfeit shares. Let me repeat: FINRA creates fraudulent counterfeit shares. Why is that? Because on December 8th, 2022, according to FINRA data itself, 13.7 million shares of stock symbol MMTLP were traded, of which 9.5 million shares were short shares. Okay, what's a short share? A short sale is when shares are sold without being purchased. Let me repeat that. Shares are sold without being purchased. That's a short sale. Short sales have the effect of diluting the shares until the shares are subsequently purchased. The idea is that you sell something that you don't own and you hope to buy it back later on at a cheaper price, right? That's what a short sale is. So that's what happened. There were 9.5 million shares that were sold, which didn't exist. And the idea was that those people, the short sellers, could buy back those shares later at some later point in time, and that would reconcile the shares. But FINRA did something different. FINRA issued a U3 halt, and they prevented the short shares from ever being closed in an open market. FINRA issued a U3 halt, and that prevented the short shares from ever being closed in an open market. What does that mean? The result of FINRA's actions resulted in the sale of counterfeit shares, because every one of those short shares became fraudulent counterfeit shares, because they were sold, but they were never purchased, and you can never purchase them. There's no way to reconcile that. It's done. Those shares are now fraudulent counterfeit shares. They're fraudulent counterfeit shares because of FINRA's actions. FINRA created the fraudulent counterfeit shares. Okay? Not only that, when you sell fraudulent counterfeit shares into the market, you suppress the price, right? Because you've sold a ton of shares that don't exist, that aren't real, right? That's called price manipulation. So FINRA is responsible for price manipulation due to the sale of fraudulent counterfeit shares, which they created, okay? So FINRA is responsible for price manipulation. Furthermore, FINRA, okay, prevented every single MMTLP shareholder from receiving a one-to-one dividend of a private company called Nexbridge Hydrocarbons. The reason for that is there were 165 million shares which were issued of MMTLP, and those shares could be, those shares would result in a one-to-one dividend of a private company called Nexbridge Hydrocarbons. There was only 165 million shares of Nexbridge Hydrocarbons issued to the issuer. Okay, though that was taken care of by Nexbridge Hydrocarbons. However, because more shares existed, right? More fraudulent counterfeit shares existed in the world, thanks to FINRA, right? Brokers could not provide a one-to-one dividend of the private company, Nexbridge Hydrocarbons, to their shareholders, right? Because they couldn't tell if a shareholder had a fraudulent counterfeit share, right? And they're not going to admit to the shares being fraudulent counterfeit, because otherwise, now the brokers are now on the hook for selling fraudulent counterfeit shares, and they could lose their brokerage license, right? FINRA is responsible for all of this. This is all FINRA's fault, okay? Well, you might say to yourself, gee, it's complicated. It's really complex, man. You can't say they created fraudulent counterfeit shares. What could anyone have done in this situation? Well, I'll tell you what they could have done. They could have done two simple things. FINRA knows this. They could have instructed their brokers of a corporate action that shorts must close their positions by a certain date. Let's say 12/12/2022. That was the date in which shorts must close their positions by. 12/12/22. Okay. They would have further informed. Once shorts close their positions by 12/12/22, that basically means all of those short shares have been purchased, and then the shares have been reconciled. You're only left with 165 million shares that were originally issued. The second action that FINRA needed to do was to inform the brokers that on December 9th through December 12th, all MMTLP positions must trade for position close only. What does that mean? That means if you're long, if you purchased a share in the open market, you can sell your shares to shorts, but you can't buy any more shares. Let me repeat. If you're long and you want to buy shares of MMTLP in the open market, you can sell your shares that you already own to short sellers who have sold you shares that didn't exist, who need to buy back the shares. Okay. So that would allow longs to close their positions. That would also allow shorts to close their positions. Shorts, don't forget, they sold shares which didn't exist, hoping to buy them back later at a cheaper price. Sometimes it goes against them and they have to buy it back at a higher price. But the shorts would be able to close their positions prior to 12/12. Okay? And if they didn't close their positions by 12/12, the broker should be forced to close it for them, right? That's what the first instruction says, right? All MMTLP position must be position close on December 9th to December 12th. That gives them 2 days for shorts to close their positions. 2 days. But if you don't close it by the last day, it'll be closed for you by the broker. Okay? What would the effect of these two orders be? The effect would be that it would reconcile all the short shares. These are shares that were already sold to buyers. Okay? But they were never purchased. And that prevented those shares from becoming fraudulent counterfeit shares. By FINRA preventing those shares from ever being purchased, those shares that were sold were fraudulent counterfeit shares. This is all FINRA's fault, okay? Let me repeat, this is all FINRA's fault. How could we back up this position? Data from FINRA's website. FINRA shows the shares that were actually sold on that day, on December 8th of 2022. And on that day, that was the last day of trading. There was 13.7 million shares of total value, of which 9.5 million shares were short sales. Don't forget, a short sell is when you sell something that you don't own and you hope to buy it back later, but now you're not allowed to buy it back later, and as a result, what you sold is fraudulent and counterfeit. And FINRA made all those shares fraudulent and counterfeit. So they created the fraudulent counterfeit shares. Okay. Not only that, we know that FINRA has been known to not follow its own rules. For instance, they have this thing called an OTC Threshold List. What is an OTC Threshold List? Well, we know stock symbol MMTLP was on the OTC Threshold List for 41 days because I did a simple search on FINRA's own website for stock symbol MMTLP. For stock symbol MMTLP. And we looked at, where is it? And we also looked at the, we looked at the dates from October 14th to the end of the year. There were 41 matches every single trading day that stock symbol MMTLP traded. It was on the OTC Threshold List. What does that mean? What does that mean? Here's FINRA's description of the OTC Threshold List. You just click on this I over here, and you find out what the OTC Threshold List is. You come up with this. There are two ways to get on this threshold list. The way we care about is Rule 4320. It says FINRA defines Rule 4320. It defines a threshold security as a security, right, that has an aggregate fail to deliver position at a registered agency of 10,000 shares or more. So they have a fail to deliver position of 10,000 shares or more. Okay. What does that mean? Every single fail to deliver position comes from naked shorting. So failures to deliver come from naked shorting, but not every single naked short results in a failure to deliver. And in general, maybe something like 1% of all naked shorts result in a failure to deliver. So the fact that there was greater than 10,000 fails to deliver means that there was like something like over 1 million naked shorts out there. Over 1 million shares that were never purchased were sold into the open market. And if you are on this OTC threshold list, it says if you're on it for 5 consecutive, you have to be on this, you have to meet all 3 conditions for 5 consecutive days in order to be on the OTC threshold list. And at that point, you're not allowed to short anymore. So if you're on this OTC threshold list for 5 days, there should be no more shorting. And as a result, you should come off the OTC threshold list. But MMTLP was on this OTC threshold list for 41 days. What does that mean? That means that FINRA did nothing to enforce their own Rule 4320 that would have forced naked shorts to close their positions. Let me repeat. FINRA did nothing to enforce their own Rule 4320 that would force naked shorts to close their positions. Not only that, FINRA was aware of naked shorting, and they did nothing. They were aware of naked shorting, and they did nothing. So FINRA enables naked shorting because as a result of what I like to call selective enforcement. They have a law. They choose not to enforce that law. It's called selective enforcement. Okay? Basically, they're saying, oh, we're not going to enforce that law. We think naked shorting is okay. We don't think it harms anybody. We know it harms shareholders. We know it harms longs because now it has a dilutive effect on the price of shares until those shorts are reconciled, which means you buy those shares back. Okay? These facts, I believe, are undisputable. If a situation arises, I think you should use the information that I presented earlier, right? Present it yourself, learn this information, show it. These facts come from FINRA itself. They cannot deny these facts, okay? If you come up with something better, all the better. And I would request that you share it so that we can all learn from you and we can all come up with something better. If you come up with something better, I think that would be great. If you don't come up with something better, use this information. I don't care what you do with it. Just use the information and go with it. That's all I'm saying, right? It says copyright over there, but use it. I'm the copyright holder because I created it. I created these slides. So I'm telling you, use this information. Feel free to use it. No problem. Okay? If you come up with something better, share it, please. If not, just use this as needed. With that, I'd like to close out by saying I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Of course, this is not financial advice. This information is, of course, intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. And I hope it's useful to somebody out there. And if you come up with something better, please share it, and then we can all use it. Okay? Thank you very much. That's all I have to say. And thanks for watching this video. Goodbye.